A modern container ship can stretch over 1,300 feet long, weigh more than 200,000 tons, and carry billions of dollars in cargo across thousands of miles of rough ocean. It navigates with military-grade satellite systems, powered by massive engines several stories tall, with every millimeter of its steel hull designed by supercomputers running complex fluid dynamics simulations. Yet, despite all that jaw-dropping technology, that massive freighter exists because of a single, desperate moment hundreds of thousands of years ago. A primitive human, stranded with zero tools, zero maps, and no understanding of physics, grabbed a fallen log floating in a river and simply held on for dear life. That is not just a colorful metaphor. That is the literal origin story of every kayak, sailboat, submarine, and aircraft carrier ever built. But the real puzzle isn't how modern engineers built a steel cargo ship. We have blueprints and physics equations for that. The real mystery is how a land-dwelling ape, with no natural ability to swim, no metal, and no maps, managed to conquer rivers, seas, and vast oceans using nothing more than what could be gathered by hand. The answer rewrites everything we thought we knew about human intelligence. For the vast majority of our history, open water wasn't a highway. It was a massive brick wall. Humans are structurally terrible in the water compared to other animals. Horses, deer, dogs, and even massive land mammals like elephants can swim instinctively from birth. Their four-legged walking motion naturally keeps their heads above water. Humans, on the other hand, walk upright on two legs. That puts our center of mass dangerously high above our hips. When we exhale, our relative density increases, and keeping our nose above the surface requires continuous, energy-draining physical effort. For early humans carrying very little body fat and already working with tired muscles, swimming across anything wider than a narrow stream was a quick path to drowning. Rivers weren't bridges connecting communities. They were formidable barriers. A wide river could divide two groups of early humans just as effectively as a mountain range. It stopped game hunting, isolated populations, and froze the spread of new ideas and tools for thousands of years. So how did we go from being trapped behind water barriers to ruling the oceans? It didn't start with brilliant engineering. It started with simple, relentless observation. Early humans survived by paying absolute attention to their surroundings. They noticed that after heavy rains, dead trees and broken branches floated downstream. Small twigs moved quickly, while giant trunks drifted slowly. Birds landed on floating logs without sinking. Heavy stones sank straight to the bottom every single time, but wood stayed on top. They didn't know the physics behind it, but the pattern was undeniable. Thousands of years later, the Greek mathematician Archimedes would formally explain that an object floats if it weighs less than the water it displaces. But early humans didn't need Archimedes. They had seen wood float 10,000 times. What they needed was a massive cognitive leap, realizing that what worked for a dead tree trunk could also work for a living person. The moment someone tested that idea changed human history forever. Picture a flood forcing a desperate hunter into deep water, or a curious child leaning on a floating branch in a shallow stream. The moment a human held onto a floating log and realized it kept their head above water, two things occurred. Physically, they stayed afloat. Cognitively, they realized the water was no longer an impassable wall. But riding a raw log is incredibly tricky. A tree trunk is a cylinder. When a human tries to climb on top, their weight sits above the center of gravity, causing the log to instantly roll over and dump them back into the water. Plus, bare hands make terrible paddles against a strong river current. A raw log was a lousy vehicle, but it was an incredible proof of concept. To make the log useful, it had to be modified. Independent groups across the globe began altering tree trunks using basic stone tools. But scraping out a massive wooden trunk with sharp rocks is brutally slow work. That's when early humans combined boat building with another revolutionary tool: controlled fire. By placing embers along the top of a log, they charred the inner wood fibers into soft charcoal. They then scraped away the burnt layer using shells or stone tools, repeatedly burning and scraping until a deep cavity was formed. To protect the outer hull, they packed wet mud along the sides. Burning and scraping turned weeks of grueling labor into just a few days. Hollowing out the log lowered the passenger's center of gravity deep inside the vessel, dramatically increasing stability and preventing it from rolling over. The dugout canoe was born. The oldest surviving physical boat ever recovered is the Pest canoe, discovered in the Netherlands and dated to around 10,000 years ago. When researchers built an exact working replica using stone tools and fire, it floated effortlessly and handled open water with impressive stability. But physical wood rots quickly, meaning human watercraft history goes back much further than surviving artifacts. On the Indonesian island of Flores, archaeologists found ancient stone tools dated to over 1 million years ago. Flores has been separated from the mainland by deep, treacherous ocean channels for millions of years. To get there, ancient human ancestors like Homo erectus had to cross deep ocean waters, long before modern Homo sapiens even existed. By 60,000 years ago, modern humans accomplished something even more astounding: a planned, open ocean crossing to reach Sahul, the prehistoric landmass combining Australia and New Guinea. This required navigating at least 50 miles of open ocean without being able to see land on the horizon. The people who made this journey were the ancestors of indigenous Australians, and they possessed the exact same brain power and cognitive ability as anyone living today. They didn't just drift by accident. They built craft capable of transporting groups, supplies, and tools across rough seas. As human needs grew, single dugout logs hit their limit. A single trunk can only be made so wide before it becomes impractical. To carry heavier loads and navigate rougher waters, people began lashing multiple logs together with plant fiber ropes, creating stable rafts. Others added side floats attached by wooden beams, inventing the outrigger canoe. In the freezing Arctic, where timber was extremely scarce, Inuit builders constructed kayaks by stretching animal hides over flexible frameworks made from animal bones and driftwood, creating completely waterproof, lightweight vessels. In the vast Pacific Ocean, Polynesian navigators pushed ocean travel to its absolute peak. Using double-hulled canoes equipped with crab claw sails, they navigated thousands of miles across the Pacific without compasses, metal, or written maps. They read the ocean like an open book. They navigated at night by memorizing the precise rising and setting points of dozens of stars. During the day, they felt the subtle distortion of ocean swells bouncing off hidden islands miles over the horizon. They tracked migrating birds, observed cloud formations, and monitored water temperature changes. Through these techniques, they successfully settled remote islands like Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand, centuries before European explorers ventured into deep waters. Eventually, the invention of the sail liberated ocean travel from human muscle power. Capturing the wind allowed larger vessels to travel vast distances carrying heavy cargo, transforming isolated local economies into global trade networks. Sea lanes connected distant civilizations, allowing goods, cultures, technologies, and ideas to flow freely across the globe. Today, over 40% of the world's population lives near a coastline, living in cities built on the foundations of maritime trade. The massive container ship plowing through the ocean today uses the exact same fundamental principle of buoyancy discovered by our ancient ancestors clinging to a floating log. It stands as a powerful reminder that when human beings encounter an impossible wall, we don't turn back, we find a way to cross it.